Namaskar. Good afternoon, students. I'm Vineeta Choudhary. Today, I'm going to take up critical theory. Students of MA Sem 3, your first paper is critical theory. I'm sure you've already done Aristotle's Poetics. Today, I'll give you a brief outline about the theory, the 6 elements, the 6 components of Aristotle's Poetics, so that you have a better understanding. You know, students, that it is the first unit. Together with Natya Ras theory, you have to do Aristotle's Poetics. With this, you also have Sidney's Apology for Poetry, Dryden's An Essay of Dramatic Poesy, Dr. Johnson's Preface to Shakespeare, Wordsworth's Preface to Lyrical Ballads, Coleridge Biographia Literaria, and then Eliot's Tradition and Individual Talent. And you also have Arnold's Essays and Criticism. So basically, critical theory, it's a school of thought. It gives you an idea how this originates in the literary criticism. So let's come to the Poetics straight away. We have very limited time and I'll try my level best to give you a peep into Aristotle's Poetics. What are the important essentials? What are the important components that forms the Poetics? Here are the 3 great Greek philosophers before you: Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. I'm sure, students, you all have heard about them. Socrates, the year was from 470 to 399 BC. A great classical Greek Athenian philosopher. He is regarded as the founder of the Western philosophy. You know, students, Socrates has not left anything. It is only on the basis of the writings of other philosophers we come to know about him. That is, by the account of the classical writers. His student is Plato, and Aristotle is Plato's student. If you read Plato's dialogues, you come to know about Socrates. So basically, the portrayal of Socrates is in the writing of these classical writers. Socrates, you know, is also called a street corner philosopher. And what is the Socratic method we talk about? He basically indulges in, questioning things, reasoning, inquiry, discussion, logic. Plato, you all are familiar with the word. His year is from 428 to 348 BC. Plato had started the great university, the great institution of learning at Athens, the ancient Greek philosopher, and he's the founder of this academy. He is actually the pivotal figure, of Greek, you can say, literature or Greek philosophers. His was the theory of forms. And as we go on with Aristotle's Poetics, you will find that how Aristotle did not agree completely to the theory given by Plato. Why does he come out with the defense? So these are the 3 great philosophers, Greek philosophers, who have laid the foundation of your philosophy. Now here is Aristotle before you. We are going to take up Poetics of Aristotle, a brief outline of his life. Born in Segria, which is very close to Macedonia. His mother came from a family of doctors. His father, as you can see on the screen, was a court physician to the king of Macedonia. And because he visited Macedonia, he was continuously, you can say, in the company of great philosophers, great literary artists. When he was a very young boy, his father died. And at the young age of 17, he was sent to Athens. Where in Athens? To the academy, which was founded by Plato. He was very much there He became a disciple of Plato and he attended his lectures for almost 20 years. Now today, our class is on the Poetics. Coming to Poetics, it is the earliest surviving work of dramatic theory. What does it focus on, students? It focuses on the literary theory. In general, when you talk about Poetics, it is said that it tells you about tragedy. When I ask my students in MA, what do you understand by Poetics? Have you heard about Aristotle? They say it is something to do with tragedy. They've already done the paper of Shakespeare. So they have a general idea. So I'm sure, students, you are all familiar with Aristotle and his work. So this theory of poetry, basically I'm going to take up is how he has taken up tragedy. What are the components of tragedy? What does he say about epic? How is this an imitation? So the Poetics, it is offering you an account of what Aristotle has taken up as poetry. So poetry is not limited only to the verse. Here, poetry means tragedy. It can mean lyric poetry, comedy, epic, satire plays, etc. In the words of Aristotle, he says they are all imitation, mimesis. I'm going to take up the term very soon. Though they may be imitations, but they are all different from each other as far as the matter, the subject, and the method is concerned. How are they different? They are different in the sense one may be using just language, the other form may be using melody or meter or language or spectacle or music or harmony. Then comes the characterization. What kind of characters are used? If it is a comedy, you have a different set of characters with a different set of role or purpose. Are they good? Are they consistent? Are they realistic? That is the issue. And of course, the last point, which is most important, you can say, is the method. How is that particular piece of poetry written? Is it a form of narration? Is it a verse poetry? Is it meant for performance or simply narration like the epic poetry? So these are the various things that we are going to focus on today's lecture. Coming to the form of Poetics. So let's have a brief glance on the form, which is the most important part of your Poetics. Students, if you see the Poetics, I'm sure you all know that you have the translated version by Butcher. So I'm sure your teachers must have already told you about it. If you open the table of contents, you will find these 5 parts in the contents. That is the preliminary discourse. He gives you the definition of tragedy. He provides you with the rules for construction of a tragedy. Then he gives a little bit about the criticism of tragedy and how tragedy is superior to epic. Coming to the preliminary discourse. Here he gives a discourse on what is a tragedy, what is a comedy, what is epic poetry, how are they different from each other, how do they differ from each other regarding their subject, the content, the matter, and the method. The definition of tragedy, I'm sure all the students didn't know. They're final year students sitting over here, and you've already done the paper on drama. What is a tragedy? Why is tragedy called something serious, of certain magnitude, of certain length? What are the various components which are very, very essential for a tragedy? If we go further to the table of contents, Aristotle has given rules for the construction of the tragedy. If you want, students, you may note down these rules Because once you know these components, it is very easy for you to follow the theory of this particular tragedy as given by Aristotle in his Poetics. He talks about the tragic pleasure. What is the term that is used by Aristotle? Catharsis. Yes? I'm sure you know the term. Catharsis is the tragic pleasure that is invoked in the spectator by pity and terror. Characters. How important are characters to a tragedy? The four kinds of things, the 4 points that he has basically focused on. What kind of characters are there? Are they good? Are they realistic? Are they appropriate? Then comes the plot of a tragedy. You know, students, Aristotle says that plot is the soul of drama. It is the most important thing. Until and unless you have a well-knit plot, the tragedy will lose its essence. The main reason Aristotle defends when he compares epic with a tragedy. One may be quite elevated in its form, yet what is more popular? It is the tragedy. The reason being that the plot of a tragedy is well knit, because it follows the 3 unities. There is a wholesome effect of it. If you take an example, if you take an epic, there can be many tragedies that can come out of that epic because of the plurality of actions, because of the multiplicity in the plots. That well-knit plot may sometimes fail in an epic. Then the rules for the construction, important thing is the diction, the language that is used, and the style. I'm going to take all these points that I'm giving here in the form in detail. Then in the fag end of Poetics, students, Aristotle discusses. There is criticism of tragedy. There are lots of points. He's leveled charges, people who have leveled charges against tragedy. And then finally, he comes up with his opinion that tragedy definitely is superior to an epic. So this is the basic form of Poetics. If you remember these 5 points, students, you can answer any question that comes on Aristotle. So quickly, some students have just joined. In a nutshell, what is given in the table of contents, students? You have the preliminary discourse, the definition of tragedy, the rules for the construction of tragedy, the criticism of tragedy, and finally coming up with the point how tragedy is regarded superior to an epic. See, when Aristotle was writing, he has written on Poetics, he wrote Politics and also Rhetoric, right? Out of these 3, we are here focusing on the Poetics. Poetics that relates basically to the drama. Regarding the tragedy being superior to epic poetry, I've already given you the points, and I'm going to take up this point in my last slides. Coming to the contents of these forms. Look at the screen, students. Aristotle here has distinguished between the genres of poetry. What are the genres of poetry? Whether it is epic poetry, he talks of lyric, whether he talks of tragedy or comedy, right? What is the point of differentiation? First is matter. Next is subject. And the third is the method. What is the matter? Matter forms the basic content. So matter, how is it written? Whether there is rhythm, what kind of language is used by the writer, by the artist, the melody is there or not. If suppose the writer is writing epic, the use of language becomes important. If a tragedy is written, then what is important? The importance of chorus, the singing chorus, the songs, the spectacle. That is more important. So that is why he calls the most important thing when you're writing the poetry is your matter. Then comes the subject. What kind of subject is treated? You know what tragedy is. You see movies, don't you? Comedy or tragedy. Yes? So tragedy, the subject matter of a tragedy is something serious. The treatment or the tragedy treats serious subjects. They are important. Whereas in a comedy, they may be less serious. A comedy, you know, may be treating, may be discussing less important subjects. Something which is, you can say, a kind of weakness or foibles of characters and meant purely for entertainment. Coming to the method, the purpose, the final point that Aristotle says. What kind of method is used by the writer, by the artist? Is he using narration or is it a direct speech? Yes, it may be a long narration as in the case of epic, or totally based on dialogues as tragedy, something that is to be performed on the stage. So, when you open your poetics, students, when you have to answer questions on your poetics, you have to see what is the form and what is the content that Aristotle basically focuses on when he is taking up this particular critical literary theory. So I'm sure these 3 points are clear to all of you. It talks about matter, about subject, and about the method. This picture I got for you all to see the kind of masks that were used when the tragedies were performed in earlier times. Aristotle identifies tragedy as the most refined version of poetry. If you compare the 3 genres of literature, of poetry, it is tragedy, epic, and comedy. If you compare these 3, so Aristotle says the most refined is tragedy. You know, students, Aristotle initially, the Poetics had 2 parts. The first part dealt with tragedy and epic, which survives even today. The translations are there even today. And the second part is lost, on which he has addressed comedy. So again, this class, because today's lecture is focused on our poetics, I'll be taking up tragedy in detail. Coming to the definition of tragedy. So first of all, let's see what is a tragedy. You all know what is a tragedy? Can anybody answer that question? Yes? What is a tragedy? Come on. Before I go on with the rest of the definition of Aristotle, anybody would like to answer? I can see students in Riva, in Jabalpur. Yes? Keep the mic close to you. See, in Chhatarpur, students are there. Just one and simple statement. What do you understand by tragedy? What is tragedy?
Hello.
Yes, I think Jabalpur, the student is trying to answer. Keep the mic close. I'm not able to hear you.
Yes, ma'am. I am Ayushi from Jabalpur Mahakaushal College.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Tragedy is something drama which is very serious and noted in a very something serious tone.
Yes.
Like you have just taught us right now, a drama written something in very serious tone.
Yes. Other than that,
Okay.
already there on the screen.
Yes, ma'am.
What about the end of a tragedy?
Ma'am, death.
Yeah. Okay. Death.
Like
All right.
like in Hamlet, in the end, Prince Hamlet died.
Yes. Very good. Very good. I'm so happy. What's your name?
Ma'am, my name is Ayushi.
Ayushi, thank you so much. Congratulations. Very good. That's a very nice answer. So I get it, students. You have a general idea of what a tragedy is. You have already done Shakespearean plays or Shakespearean dramas. So what Aristotle is giving in the definition of tragedy is, it is the imitation of an action. What kind of action? That is serious and complete. It is of certain magnitude. It tells you a complete full story which is of appropriate length. In language, it has that artistic ornament. Yes, embellished, decorated, high-flown words, metaphors, figures of speech. They help you to make this tragedy all the more better because it is something that is performed on the stage. It contains rhythm and harmony. It is in the form of action, not narration. And of course, it arouses the feelings of pity and fear. And it is these are the feelings that purges the spectators, that forms finally the catharsis. So students, if you remember this particular definition given by Aristotle, the entire Poetics, any question that comes on your Poetics, you can answer that. Quickly, let's see once again, and I'm going to ask you questions on this. You may even note it down. What has Aristotle said? I've tried to simplify the definition for you. What is tragedy? It is an imitation, a mimesis. Mimesis of what? Of whatever goes on in life. Something that is serious. Something that is complete. It is of certain magnitude. It is of great length. It has to be a beginning, a middle, and in any tragedy that you pick up, there has to be an introduction, yeah, from where you start with the tragedy. Gradually, the plot goes further, and you come up to the climax of that particular tragedy, and then starts the denouement. So it has to be of certain magnitude where you can have the complete plot. Language has to be artistic, ornamental. It contains music, songs with rhythm and harmony. And of course, it is not narrated. Of course, you can read tragedies in the books, but basically the goal is the performance, the dramatic performance on the stage. And last, and the most important aspect of a tragedy is that it should arouse the feelings of pity and fear, leading to the purgation of your feelings through catharsis. So this is the basic definition, students, which has been given by Aristotle. Quickly, what exactly tragedy means? Literally, it meant a goat song earlier, which refers to the practice of giving a goat as a sacrifice or like a prize. It was given at the religious festivals in honor of the god Dionysus. So this is the original term or the original meaning of a tragedy. Here I have the map of Greece before you, and to have a general idea of what Aristotle has said. In his Poetics, Aristotle proposes, what is the proposes? He proposes to study poetry. How? By analyzing the various constitutive parts and then finally drawing certain conclusions on it. See the second portion. The portion of Poetics discusses mainly the tragedy and the epic poetry. As I told you, there are two parts. One part, the first part deals with your tragedy and epic, which survives even today, and the second part, which was focused on the comedy, is lost. It is not with us anymore. You can see it, I've given it on the screen. Let us come to the 6 most important elements of theatre. You can call them the 6 components of tragedy. I would request the students, since this is the first unit, so I'm sure some of them have already done Aristotle. Can anybody tell me what are the 6 elements of theatre? What are the 6 most important components of a tragedy? क्या है वो aspects of tragedy which are most important? Yes? Shajapur, I can see the students over there. Or Chindwara? Or Riva? And Chhatarpur, yes. Anybody would like to answer? What are the 6 elements of theatre? What are the 6 important components of a tragedy?
Hello.
So, okay, we again have Jabalpur.
Yes, ma'am. It's Ayushi again from Jabalpur.
I should just hold the mic close to you.
Yes, ma'am. It's Ayushi again from Jabalpur.
Yes.
Ma'am, I remember few. The 6 main, not exactly the 6 main elements, but I remember the few. The action, time, characters, and the plot. There are
Okay, your
few.
question is very good. Plot and character are the most important, you can say, components of a tragedy. Very good, Ayushi. Congratulations once again. So students, you can see the most important, sit down, Ayushi, it's fine.
Thank you, ma'am.
The most important, you can say, component of a tragedy is the plot. Yes? Then character, thought, diction, music, and the spectacle. So students, when you are doing Aristotle's Poetics, first of all, remember the definition. We've already done definition. Some of the students have just joined in. Quickly, as I told you, remember that it is an imitation. Yes, it is something, tragedy deals with something serious, complete, of certain magnitude. It has to arouse in you the feelings of pity and fear. Then comes the components. What are the 6 important components of a tragedy? The most important component of a tragedy is the plot. Plot is more important than the character, because that is the thing around which the entire thing revolves. Then comes character, the thought. Thought sometimes may be the message also, or the moral that comes out of the tragedy. Then diction, the choice of words, the metaphor, the ornament part of a tragedy. The music. Music is the songs, the choric songs. And finally, the spectacle. I'll be taking all these 6 components in detail now. Plot. In Greek, it is called mythos. You may note it down, students. Plot is called mythos. What is a plot? What has Aristotle written about the plot? Say you're doing fiction, you're reading novels also, right? You know what a plot is. So plot is what? Just like in a story, in the drama also, it is very much the soul of drama, the life and soul of that particular literary piece. Aristotle stated in his Poetics that plot is the life and soul of drama. It should take a linear form. Linear form in the sense, there has to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. Until and unless these 3 aspects are there, there won't be any continuity, there won't be any proceeding. There are going to be jarring effects otherwise. And that is possible only, when a drama or a tragedy is divided into 5 acts. You've been reading Shakespearean tragedies, haven't you? You see that the first scene or the first act introduces you to the basic theme or the main characters. Act 2 gradually leads you towards the climax. In Act 3, you have the final climax, and then starts the denouement, finally leading to the conclusion, as a student from Jabalpur said, death or loss of something. So there has to be a linear form going right from the beginning to the end. Then Aristotle stated that plot is the structure. It is the arrangement of the incidents. There may be lots of incidents in the entire tragedy, but they all need to be well knit. There has to be a connection between them. There should be a complete whole, complete in itself, and as I told you in the definition, of certain magnitude. So this is the first part of mythos that Aristotle stated. So students, remember, plot is the most important aspect, most important component of a tragedy. It needs to be, right from the beginning to the end, there has to be a proper form. It is, you can say, an arrangement of incidents, and it is to be complete, of certain magnitude, adequate magnitude. I go further. I'm sure this is clear to all of you. As I said once again, plot is the most important component of a tragedy, so kindly pay attention. Further, Aristotle stated, there has to be a beginning of a tragedy. A beginning, starting, जहाँ से शुरू होता है आपकी tragedy. Not necessary. It is not the consequence of any previous action. Means it starts right from there. Not necessary there has to be any reference or any context to it. But when you come to the middle part of the tragedy, this has to flow logically from your beginning. Only then there's going to be a linear process. I hope the point is clear to you, students. First is the beginning, and in that beginning, no previous action is required. Then you have a middle which goes logically from your beginning, and this middle is going to lead to the end also, to the conclusion. And the final end of the tragedy, this follows logically from the middle. And at the same time, the curtain comes down. No further action should follow after that. A clean finish. If you follow these three particular aspects, if you can find there is a beginning, a middle, and an end, well lit with each other, following a middle which is coming from the beginning and leading to your end, an end which is again logically following from the middle and taking a clean finish at the end, we say it is a well-knit plot. So remember this particular thing about the plot as stated by Aristotle in his Poetics. Then Aristotle states that the plot needs to be unified. Each and every element of the plot should tie to the rest of the story. Sometimes, you have the main plot and there are certain subplots also. Subplots should be related. They should be directly connected to your main plot. There shouldn't be any loose ends. This gives that universal appeal to the tragedy, that aspect of universality. The plot may contain surprises that fit logically into the sequence of events. I'm going to take this up in detail. It's clear till here, students? So the plot is the life and soul of tragedy. It has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. There are going to be no loose ends. And there has to be that concept of appeal will come with that universal aspect. The three unities have to be adhered to according to Aristotle. You've done Shakespearean plays in the previous year, haven't you? You've already taken up Hamlet, yes? Just raise your hands, how many of you have read Hamlet? हाथ उठाएं जिन लोगों ने Hamlet किया हुआ है. Okay, very good. I can see students at Riva, in Jabalpur, as well as Chhindwara. So you have a general idea about the unity of time, place, and action. Coming to unity of time, so I'm not going this into detail since you've already done drama, action of play, that should finish in one day, within 24 hours. Aristotle stated, because it is not possible to go beyond 24 hours. Only then we say that yes, the dramatist is adhering to the theory given by Aristotle. Then unity of place, the entire action should take place at one place. All action occurs in one place. You can see the stage. I got the picture for you. The Greek stage is there before you in Athens. Stage is one part. No settings are to be changed according to Aristotle. So action is limited to one single location. No multiple settings are required. So Aristotle states that the dramatist who is writing a tragedy should not try to compress the geography as it is done in the movies today, as it is done in the plays these days. And third is the unity of action. What is unity of action? The play follows one storyline. There is one main plot, one main story. And there may be a few subplots, but they should be interlinked with the main plot. So these are the three unities. And if these three unities are followed, only then we can say, yes, it was a strong, well-structured plot. So I'm sure students, now the concept is clear. Some students have just come in. Let me tell you that we are discussing the plot as given by Aristotle in his Poetics. He says, no loose ends. A plot should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It should have three unities: unity of place, unity of time, and unity of action. Then, plots can be of many kinds. A plot may be simple or a complex plot. Sometimes you even have episodic plot or a dual plot. So students, what is a simple plot? A plot is simple when the change in the fortune of the hero takes place without any peripeteia or discovery. And it is called complex when it involves both the reversal of the fortune as well as the recognition or the discovery. The change in the fortune of the hero, as you can see on the screen, I put it down over there, a change that comes from ignorance to knowledge. This is a very, very important point. If you are doing the plot, you should know that how the surprise is brought into the plot. What is the reversal of fortune and what is the recognition, what is the discovery? A reversal of fortune. Peripeteia. What is it basically? Suddenly you find a change. You all have read Oedipus, haven't you? Sophocles. And you find, in the end, sudden recognition comes. Ignorance to knowledge. And he comes to know, Oedipus comes to know that he himself is responsible for the calamity that has come on his kingdom. And then comes the reversal of state of affairs. So something that happens absolutely opposite, a reversal of one state of affairs to the opposite, that is reversal of fortune. The change by which the entire action veers round its opposite. It is subject always to the rule of probability, or you can say necessity. The hero or the protagonist of the tragedy, who till now was in very good shape, who was regarded as a hero, suddenly finds, because of the recognition, because of the ignorance is no more there, because of the knowledge now, suddenly he finds that everything is lost, or vice versa. So this particular element is introduced by the dramatists, and that makes the plot a bit complex and more interesting. So this is again a tool which has been given to the dramatists by Aristotle. And the second is your anagnorisis. Anagnorisis, what is the meaning of anagnorisis? Discovery, recognition. आप देखते हैं ना, जब हिंदी movies देखते हैं, suddenly the hero or the protagonist comes to know that in case he was a prince taking the role of a prince, he comes to know that he's actually a pauper. So discovery or recognition, this is again in relation to the character. How does this change come from ignorance to knowledge? By signs. Sometimes by the marks on the body. They come to know that, okay, they recognize, okay, such and such person is actually this person. So the identity becomes clear now. Sometimes by the direct discoveries also, which are invented by the author. How it produces love or hate between the persons, it is all destined by the poet, either leading to good or to bad fortune. There is logical reasoning, and sometimes the discovery comes based on the incidents. So, discovery or recognition or the reversal of the fortune, as I took in the earlier slide, both are very, very important aspects of a plot. It is these two components, you can say, that makes a plot from simple to complex. Apart from this, look at the screen, students. The best kind of anagnorisis always accompanies peripeteia. How? If both of them are there, only then the plot becomes very interesting. Both the reversal of the fortune and the recognition, they will help to arouse the feeling of pity and fear. This will help to draw the play to its final conclusion. That is why it is important. A reversal of fortune affects a discovery, or sometimes the discovery comes first and there is a reversal of fortune, as in the case of Oedipus Rex. Oedipus has asked Charybdis to find out what is the reason why is the kingdom plagued, and finally comes the discovery that it is Oedipus who is responsible because he murdered his father Laius and married his own mother Jocasta. So here is discovery first and then there is the reversal of fortune. So both are very important for a very strong plot. I've given the example. Take a quick reading, students. Oedipus's discovery of who his mother is. This brings about or affects a reversal of his fortune from a proud king to the disgrace that he had to face. So I hope both the points are clear to all of you students. One is the reversal of fortune and the other is the recognition, the discovery, how it takes place. So both becomes important for your plot. Together with these 2 points, what else is important for a tragedy? The calamity, the disastrous incidents, the tragedy that takes place. And this may be explained or this may be shown by the dramatist by the suffering. Actions of destructive or painful nature are given. Murders may be committed, torture, death on the stage, agony, wounds. So all these is going to affect that, to arouse that pity of, the feelings of pity and fear, the pathos and the catharsis in the mind of the audience, in the hearts of the audience. So these are the 3 most important things that helps you to make a well-structured plot. And the plot becomes more interesting if it is slightly complex, if it is showing the reversal of your fortune and at the same time the discovery of it. Coming to catharsis. I'm sure you all have heard the term catharsis. A tragedy then is the imitation of an action with incidents arousing pity and fear, wherewith to accomplish its catharsis of such emotions. What is catharsis? When you totally identify yourself with the actor on the stage. You feel the same feelings, and that leads you to have the same feeling inside too. And that state of that aesthetic pleasure is called catharsis. It is a Greek word. It may be written even by C, catharsis. So what is the meaning of catharsis, students? Purging of your emotions, purification of your emotions. So it is the release of the emotions of pity and fear. I'm sure you know the term now. So when you're doing Aristotle's Poetics, remember first of all, as I said, the definition. Then remember the 6 components, which are very, very important. Then with those 6 components of the plot, basically, remember that with the reversal and the discovery, this finally leads to the catharsis, means the release of the emotions, which will lead to that aesthetic pleasure, which will lead to catharsis. Take a reading, students. Catharsis is the purgation of your feelings, a purifying. You can even call it a figurative cleansing of your emotions. You know, you have all those pent-up emotions inside you. And when you see something on the stage, and you identify yourself totally with the actors on the stage and whatever is going on the stage, you have the feeling of pity and fear, which Aristotle has termed as the tragic drama on its audience. So then comes the release of that emotional tension that is mounting inside you. After that overwhelming experience, and it refreshes you. That state of aesthetic pleasure is termed as catharsis. Is it clear to all of you? So catharsis is the purgation of your feelings, a purifying, a cleansing of your emotions. A very important term, you often get it in your questions, especially in the short notes, that what do you understand by the term catharsis, or what is the cathartic effect in such and such tragedy. Coming to few quantitative parts also that have been given by Aristotle in his Poetics. You know, there are total 26 chapters, and in the again, he has given certain terms that you should understand. You've already done some when you're doing the drama: prologue, episode, exode, perode, stasimon, and komos. What is prologue? Everything that precedes perode, that is the first speech of the chorus. Prologue comes before that first speech of the chorus. Episode, episodes, you know, there are various episodes, any action that goes on between the choral songs. Exode, what is exode? Everything that follows the last choral song. After the exode, there is no choral song. So in between there used to be choral songs in the tragedies. Exode is the final thing. After that, the curtain comes down. Perode, the first full statement of chorus. Then there are two more terms that have been taken by Aristotle. Stasimon, that is the choral song which is sung in a certain meter, in a certain rhythm. And komos, that is the lamentation that was there, sung by chorus. So few terms are, I've only taken a few terms over here. Again, it is not possible for me to go into detail in this 1 hour. Coming to the second most important thing is the character, who is the agent for the action. A tragedy takes place because of that character. So the character becomes the second most important theatrical element that brings the plot in, we can say, fourth, becomes the embodiment of action. And the main characters, he says, has to be good, appropriate, and consistent. But the character has to have one tragic flaw that is called hamartia. The next important thing is thought in a tragedy. Thought is the message which is understood to be comprehended by the audience. It sometimes also becomes the moral of the play. I'm going a bit faster because I'm running short of time, students. Then comes diction and style. Diction, arrangement of the words in a literary composition. What kind of terms are used? Are they ordinary terms or foreign terms? Whether metaphors are used, ornamental statements, words, invented words. So all these make an impact in the tragedy. Diction and the style, the way the dramatist has used the words. So these are the kinds of words that may be used. Music is a part of tragedy once again, which may be shown by the noises made by the actors or by the sound effects. Aristotle says that these are theatrical parts and these add to the spectacle. Songs or melody, this is provided even by the chorus. I've already taken the terms, whether it comes in the form of exode, choric songs, or in between episodes. The song is there. So this again becomes theatrical, why it is different from an epic. And of course, the last point is the spectacle, the mode of representation, the visual element of theater. The better the visuals, more attractive are the audience. You find it more interesting. So mode of imitation is very important, how you show the disaster. You can see the picture of Oedipus on the screen. What arises, that fear and pity in the spectator is important. But at the same time, Aristotle, you know, certain statements of Aristotle become a bit contradictory. He says that sometimes it can even be enjoyed by the blind, or you can even read it and you may enjoy it. So again, that depends how the dramatist had dealt with the spectacle aspect. Here is a picture from the Greek tragedy. Quickly go through it, students. Tragedy may be of 4 types: complex tragedy, tragedy based on suffering, a character, or spectacle. And epic also can be simple, complex, of character, or of suffering. The tragic hero, usually of noble birth, comes with the ultimate downfall. Why? Because of the hamartia, because of the tragic flaw. Like Macbeth, what was hamartia? What was the tragic flaw? Ambition. Okay, so this has to be portrayed realistically and consistently. Understanding the mind of the tragic hero how he understands or comprehends the web. That is very, very important. What is the tragic error? Mistake on the part of the hero till he comes to the final catastrophe. Then there are a few more terms like retribution or nemesis, means the punishment that is given for the acts of hubris. What is hubris? Hubris is excessive pride. That is again one flaw that the hero may have. There has to be one tragic flaw that leads, to the tragedy, to the downfall of the hero. In his Poetics, Aristotle uses the tragedy of Oedipus Tyrannus. He has given the example and how the protagonist, who starts as a very prosperous man, finally loses everything through this tragic flaw. Three elements of tragedy: the pathos and the suffering has to be there. Hubris is the excessive pride which may be in the hero, leading to his downfall. And finally, the tragic flaw, as I've already taken up. The last chapter, chapter 26, Aristotle has given the difference between epic poetry and tragedy, which is of a higher form. He says tragedy is superior. Why? Because tragedy has all the aspects which are there in an epic. Epic and tragedy, the unity of plot is there, but sometimes epic may not have the unity of plot because of the plurality of actions. Epic poetry may be longer than tragedy, but tragedy is more focused because it uses musical, spectacle. There is a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the plot is well lit. So in the final stage, or in the final chapter, Aristotle states in his Poetics that if you weigh both, he concludes by weighing tragedy against epic poetry, and finally he determines that tragedy on the whole is superior to an epic. Of course, epic is of a higher form. It is an elevated style. It uses the heroic meter, whereas tragedy is using iambic meter. But on the whole, if you take all the important aspects, he calls it that it is on the whole superior. So I'm sure students, you have a general idea about Aristotle's Poetics, the definition of tragedy, what is an imitation, how pity and fear is aroused, the main terms, what is a reversal and what is a recognition, what is catharsis, what are the three unities that are important, what is the tragic flaw and the tragic error, and finally, how is an epic poetry different from tragedy and how a tragedy is superior to epic poetry. I've already got a warning from the team over here. So thank you so much, students. I hope I get more time. We can take the various aspects in detail. Quickly read the last statement that I've given over here by Aristotle. Anybody can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person and to the right degree and at the right time and for the right purpose and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power and is not easy. Thank you so much. Namaskar.